I'm always flattered to have people round.
Yeah, of course you are.
And I have lovely crisps. And this other woman came up to me and said, "Do you know who that was?" And I went, "No." And she said, "That was Anna Wintour." As if I'd just gone up to her and gone, "Oh, great coat. Love your coat. Oh, nice."
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show with Sky.
Morning, Tom.
Very kind of you. Thank you. And thank you for getting that audience in
I
to
love
cheer.
the fact that you're quite rock and roll, aren't you?
Well, I don't like to brag about it, but I can be, Chris, yes.
Yeah, and you tied one right on last night with some pals, didn't you?
I had a little drink last night, and I've got that sort of party voice this morning. Hello, yeah, nice to see you. So I'm hoping to mature into somebody who has a very scratchy voice in their later life.
So Tom Allen's Too Much, his latest memoir, is out now. I presume you were celebrating the launch of said book.
Indeed, I was. I just had a couple of people around who'd helped me with the book, and it was very nice. Because if you don't mark things, then it's very easy, isn't it, for them to just pass you by, and you don't celebrate anything.
So you said you couldn't get rid of them. How did you get rid of them in the end?
I think I was just falling asleep, and I think the look of I do have to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning
to
talk about the book which you
on
seem
so
to say you
hard.
wanted to celebrate.
Yeah.
No, it was very nice, and people very kindly came to see me. So I'm always flattered to have people round.
Yeah, of course you are.
And I have lovely crisps.
And you now have your own house, which features heavily in the book.
Yes.
It's very much a love letter to your dad, this, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I wrote it. I lost my dad about a year ago, and I knew I was going to be writing a book this year, and I had ideas about things I wanted to say, and then it made sense to contextualise it with talking about the loss of my dad, who was a South London working class man who had this strange son in me, who was this sort of flamboyant, kind of Victorian clothes wearing, stand up talking son, and actually coped remarkably well, really. And I never really fit in as a child. With other children, I would tell the other children I was an emperor, and that's very difficult for a dinner lady in Zone 5 to deal with. But I talk a lot about losing my dad, and I talk about how it's changed my perspective on myself as a younger person, and how it's made me reframe kind of who I was, and I think it's good to talk about however you're feeling, because
And you just referred to yourself as a younger person, something you don't really do, because you say as a 6-year-old you felt like 30, as a 30-year-old you felt 50. You do allude to the fact that now you feel older. You've always been 20 years older than the calendar says.
I think I was about 46 years old when I was born.
Right.
And
why was that? I get it, but how come?
I don't know. And do you know what's strange as well, Chris, is I thought I was such a freakish person to say it, but it turns out there are lots of people who feel like it. Just form a club of us, sort of strange. We were always described as a pleasure to have in class.
Right.
And
those were the days.
Those were the days. But there's lots of children out there, it turns out, who people come up to me and go, "Oh, my son, yes, he often, will pretend he's a king, or will tell everybody he's the king of the world, or I've got a son who doesn't really get on with the other children at school, but he'd rather talk about, he'd rather talk about Patricia Routledge," which was one of my things. And so there's quite a lot of us who sort of see ourselves from a different era. We must be time travellers.
Well, I think maybe you are, because the fact that you cite Patricia Routledge in the book and Keeping Up Appearances is interesting, because you also cite Kenneth Williams. Now, if I've done the maths right, Kenneth Williams was a massive star in my childhood, but I'm considerably older than you.
Stop it, Chris.
No, but I really am.
Yes, it's true.
I'm half a generation, or if not more than that, older than you. And so he was massive when I was a kid, but he wasn't massive when you were a kid. So how come you know about Kenneth Williams so much?
I don't really know, other than my mum has always sort of encouraged me to watch various comedy things.
Right.
And so I think she kind of wanted me to watch things like Carry On films
Right,
as
I
a
see.
child. But I think it's what I sought him out. I think there's something about outsiders. If you feel like you're different, you find each other somehow across a crowded world, and you sort of latch on to people, which is why I think people will kind of find their hero. It might be somebody who's been dead for 50 years or 200 years. But like, that's my person.
Right.
So
that explains it a bit. So you didn't know him in period then? You've caught up on him? Do you remember him being around?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think he died in the mid-'80s and I was born in 83.
Yeah.
So vaguely.
Okay.
But I just sort of remember him being such a character. And actually, he did a lot of children's things. Like he did Will o' the Wisp and children's...
He connected with kids
documentaries.
hugely.
And connected with children, because I think he wasn't afraid
He couldn't abide grown-ups.
Yeah, I think that's true, isn't it? He was somebody who just felt like an outsider. And I think he wasn't afraid to be abrupt with people or to be harsh to people. I think children quite like that because they live in a world where everyone's, oh, you're so wonderful, aren't you great? Oh, that's a wonderful picture. And he went, wow, no. And suddenly... I don't know. I think that connects on a sort of
He
human
was
level.
brilliant. So I remember him on Parkinson, on Asphalt,
Of course,
you know,
yeah.
all the great chat shows. I mean, he was a brilliant actor. He was a brilliant sort of comic artist. He really was a comic artist. He could sort of do anything you wanted him to. Brilliant monologues, things like that. But whenever he was on a chat show, Parky on a Saturday night, if Kenneth Williams was on, he was hilarious from the get-go. I mean, you had to start watching. He was so unbelievably funny, you know. And famously, he lived in that flat just off Marylebone.
Yeah, Great Portland Street, wasn't it?
Great Portland Street. So over the road from Marylebone Road, just on the Regent's Park side. Famously private. Like, you talk about that because you're a fan.
Well, really loved him and loved that he was unafraid to be different and to be an outsider. And I think actually the world, particularly with social media, encourages us all to be a bit the same and compare ourselves and to sort of always feel like we should be somewhere else or something else. And I think anybody who goes, no, you know what, I'm just me, I'm just going to do my thing, and if you don't like it, I don't care, is actually very inspiring. And actually, not to bring it back to me, but my dad actually was quite a lot like that as well, and would, you know, if he was having a conversation with someone he wanted it to end, he'd go, I'm bored of you now. And people like that. People actually like people who are abrupt because they know where they stand.
Yeah, they don't like people who say they're abrupt, because some people say, I tell it like it is, mate.
Oh, yeah, I don't like those
Those people don't tell it like it is, but your dad did, and those who do don't need to say they do.
Yes.
if you know what I mean.
It's quite an unusual trait, and I think, like I say, our era is it's quite anathema to our generation.
I love that you talk about your first night going to a gay sauna. That is hilarious. I couldn't wait to see how that ended.
Well, it didn't end as I think it was supposed to end, but I think I've always felt...
Don't blow the ending, because it's a really good chapter.
Indeed, and I won't... No, stop it, Tom. You brought it up. Anyway, no, I thought I should go to one of those places, and I found myself feeling absolutely lost and totally out of my depth. And I think, again...
But you had to go.
Well, I didn't even do that.
No, but you gave the whole night. You gave the experience a go.
I walked in, yeah, and I thought, well, I've got to talk about these things because actually, you know, I felt like such I didn't know what I was doing. Particularly, I think for gays, sometimes there's a pressure to be like, you've got to be so confident, you've got to be able to do this, and everybody's doing everything, and everybody's living their life to the full, and living in Elephant and Castle, growing a moustache, rolling up their trousers, carrying a tote bag. But sometimes, you know, one doesn't have the energy for that, or is just a little bit too insecure to do any of that stuff. And I thought, well, if I don't talk about it, then everybody else will potentially feel like if no one talks about it, everyone else will feel like
Let's link your dad to Gay Soho, as you did so beautifully. And it made me spit my tea out, the next bit, when you said that your dad accidentally looked a bit gay.
Well, he went in, I met him in town.
Yes.
And I was in town, and he was going to a meeting somewhere, and he said, oh, I'll find a pub, don't worry, I'll meet you there. And I was like, okay, fine. He was like, oh, I'm in this pub, I don't even know which one it was, like one of those proper old...
Carnaby Street? Would he be on Carnaby Street?
Sort of
maybe?
around the back of Carnaby Street, I think. Yeah, between Carnaby Street and Wardour Street, one of those roads.
Yeah.
And I walked in and I was like, my dad went, oh, it's a proper man's pub, this proper bloke's pub. And he was sort of delighted to find, like, oh, proper old London still exists. Of course, it was a gay bar. It was a proper man's pub. They all looked like him. They were all bald men in their sort of 50s and 60s. Great big rainbow flag over the fireplace. And, you know, playing Christina Aguilera on the television. Dad's like, oh, yeah, proper man's pub. Because they're all just sat there, just sort of looking
And
a bit
he had
gruff.
no idea.
No idea at all. But
I love the
had a
fact you've been to Japan.
Oh, yes.
That's
You've
a
been, haven't
lovely
you?
chapter. Yeah, I went very briefly. I can't really remember going, to be honest.
Oh, really? It's very, very wonderful. I like it because it's very formal and.
But you got out
lots
of Tokyo,
bowing.
which is the thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I found Tokyo quite oppressively busy,
it's
but
unbelievably oppressive.
But you can get that wonderful train, the Shinkansen.
This is the bullet train.
You might call it the bullet train. I call it the Shinkansen
Well,
because
in
I've
the-
actually
excuse me, in the book,
I've actually
you
been
call
to
it-
Japan.
you call it the
No,
bullet
I know,
train.
Chris.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And I went to Kyoto, and it's very beautiful. Kyoto. It's like really old, lots of old buildings, and we wanted to go to a theatre, traditional Japanese theatre, walking around trying to find it. And Japanese people are so polite and so nice. Everybody's always bowing, taking off their shoes. Anyway, we couldn't find it. And then we did find this building that was all lit up. And we thought, oh, this must be it. Walking through all these rooms, couldn't find this theatre. No one to talk to there at all. Eventually, this woman came out in traditional Japanese clothing, makeup and hair, looked at us up and down and went, this is my house. And we were horrified, especially wearing shoes around a Japanese person's. I mean, awful.
So what, your
No,
New
I
York
liked it.
period, that's fun.
Oh, yeah, went to New York. Thought I should be something else. Thought I should be someone else. Got there. Wasn't really. Had a nice time and met people and met wonderful friends.
The lady
But
you hung out with sounded quite fun.
oh, Lily is tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Who's she? What's...
She's a friend of a friend. It's one of those people you connect with, just a friend of a friend, really.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, come and stay with me. I don't mind. Oh, it's great. Yeah. And so went to stay with her. But she was also hosting like a crockery group's ceramic exhibition at the same time I was staying there. So I was staying on her floor but couldn't move for fear of just rolling over and knocking over all of these ceramics. And
Not so much a bull in a china shop, but...
yes, a gay in a china shop.
Yeah.
And would have probably just bought it all now. But yeah, I thought I should be more confident when I was in New York. And I tried it and was walking along the street one day and saw this woman in an amazing coat. And I thought I'm going to be American about this. And so I said to her, oh, I love your coat. Great coat. And she stared at me really angrily. I thought, that's strange. Got to the crossing and this other woman came up to me and said, do you know who that was? And I went, no. And she said, that was Anna Wintour. As if I'd just gone up to her and gone, oh, great coat. Love your coat. Oh, nice.
I'm fascinated by her. So the whole book, I think, is a love letter to that. But you do actually finish off with a letter, don't you? And you left it a
Yes.
while before you wrote that letter.
Yeah, I did actually. Put it off until the end of the process, really.
Yeah.
Because with grief, what I found is it's never quite as it's depicted in films or, you know, again, as people put on social media or everything we have in our world is often so filtered and so kind of in a box. And I found that it was more worthwhile to sort of do it as I was feeling it. And so, yeah, I wrote a letter to him and found actually I was able to get some... It was quite calming because we did have a really good relationship and we were really close, but we could often wind each other up. And so it was important, I think, to sort of have
Yeah,
that.
because your mum used to recognise when you were both locking horns, didn't she?
Oh, yeah, I think a lot of people do it, but, oh, yeah, I mean, but of course, why wouldn't we? Like, he was a man born in 1941, worked for his whole life as a coach driver. I'm taking them to a hotel that doesn't have a reception area and think it's wonderful. And they hated it. They absolutely hate, you know,
They
things
made
like
their
that.
excuses and left.
Basically, yeah, because it's all this kind of poncy world that I thought, oh, it's so wonderful. And they were like, no, it's not. It's really fake. And I couldn't see that.
And they pretended they wanted to move on, but actually they just wanted to go home.
I think they just wanted to get away probably from me.
Tom, lovely to see you, man.
Lovely to be here.
Enjoy the rest of your book launch. Are you appearing on many, many shows?
Well, I have a few appearances, Chris, but none as nice as this, of course.
Aw, and he says it like he means it as well. Tom Allen, too much. Are you on tour with this? You're going to take it on tour?
And I'm taking it on a book tour. I'm going to be in Manchester on Sunday, and I'm going to be in Edinburgh on Tuesday. And all details are at my website, tomindeed.com.
Tom, lovely to see you, man.
Lovely to be here.
Tom
Thanks for
Allen's
having me.
Too Much out now.